The first time Sloane Mercer told me to erase my name, I obeyed. The second time, I smiled, pressed the white rubber against the paper, and rubbed until the entire auditorium went silent. She had expected the penciled words to disappear. Instead, a darker sentence surfaced beneath them, letter by letter, as if the paper had been waiting 10 years to testify. Substitute Evelyn Hart for Sloane Mercer. The instruction was faint, indented rather than written, but the overhead document camera enlarged every stroke onto the screen behind us. Sloane's face drained so quickly that even from the piano bench I saw the powder on her cheeks turn gray. Her mother, seated in the front row beneath the gold crest of Bellwether Conservatory, rose halfway from her chair and froze. 300 donors stopped breathing. The live stream counter kept climbing. I held the old piano recital program between two fingers and looked directly at the girl who had built her life on my music. "You asked me to erase it," I said. "I did." That was the moment her pride finally cracked. But it was not where the story began. It began with applause I could not claim, a concerto I had written in secret, and a death that taught me the difference between being forgotten and being erased. In my first life, I spent 11 years standing just outside the light. Sloane stood inside it. She was the conservatory's miracle child, the heiress with perfect posture, a silver laugh, and hands insured for more money than my father's house had ever been worth. Newspapers called her interpretations fearless. Critics praised the unusual emotional architecture of her compositions. Students copied the way she tied a black ribbon around her wrist before every performance. Nobody knew the ribbon covered the scar from the day she punched a mirror after losing a junior competition to me. Nobody knew her famous piece, Glass Orchard, had first existed as 4 pages of cramped notation in my exercise book. Nobody knew that when she walked on stage, I sometimes sat in a soundproof rehearsal room behind the hall, playing through a linked digital piano while her hands hovered over silent keys beneath theatrical lighting. Bellwether called it a technological rehearsal demonstration. In truth, it was fraud. I told myself I was surviving. My father's debts were enormous. My scholarship could vanish with one signature, and Dean Mercer controlled both. Each compromise felt temporary until my entire life became one. The night I died, Sloane received a standing ovation for my concerto in E-flat minor. She had changed 3 notes, renamed it Inheritance, and told the press she had composed it during a period of grief. I watched from the wings with the original manuscript folded under my coat. For once, I planned to speak. Not privately. Not politely. I had sent copies to a journalist, an arts lawyer, and the conservatory board. I had also arranged for the backstage monitor to display my dated drafts during Sloane's encore. I remember thinking I had finally become brave. Then the monitor went black. The journalist vanished from the reserved seat. 2 security officers appeared beside me, and Sloane stepped off stage smiling through tears that belonged to me. "You should have stayed useful," she whispered. An hour later, driving home through freezing rain, my brakes failed on the river road. The guardrail folded.
Het licht spun.
The last thing I heard was my own concerto playing from the radio while the announcer called Sloane a once-in-a-generation genius. Then water pressed against the windows, black and absolute, and the world ended before I could say my own name aloud. I woke to the metronome on my childhood desk, striking 80 beats per minute. Not an alarm. Not a hospital machine. A wooden metronome with a chipped brass pendulum, exactly as it had looked when I was 19. I sat up so violently that the sheet music on my lap scattered across the floor. My bedroom smelled of dust, lavender polish, and the rain that leaked through the west window whenever the gutter clogged. On the wall hung a calendar from 8 years before my death. Friday, October 14th, was circled in red. Bellwether Founders Gala audition. My hands were younger. The burn mark from the soundboard accident had vanished. My phone showed 17 unread messages from Sloane, all demanding that I bring the revised cadenza before noon. For several minutes, I could only listen to the metronome.
Click, click, click.
Each beat said impossible. Each beat also said alive. I touched my throat, my wrists, the unbroken bones beneath my skin. Then I laughed so hard I frightened myself. I had not been rescued. I had been returned. Memory did not arrive gently. It struck in overlapping flashes. Dean Mercer threatening my scholarship, Sloane crying in a stairwell, my father signing a loan agreement he did not understand. The first time I played behind a curtain while another girl bowed. I knew what would happen that afternoon. I would win the audition, then Sloane would collapse theatrically in the corridor and claim I had switched our scores. Her mother would resolve the scandal by allowing Sloane to perform my arrangement while I remained enrolled under probation. That single humiliation would establish the pattern of my next decade. I also knew that confronting them immediately would fail. In my first life, I had believed truth was a hammer. I had swung it whenever I became desperate, only to discover that powerful people could call the hammer stolen, unstable, or dangerous. This time, I needed truth to become architecture. It had to surround them before they realized they were trapped. I turned off the metronome, picked up the pages from the floor, and noticed a corner of faded cream paper beneath the piano. It was the recital program from Hawthorne Civic Hall, dated June 3rd, 12 years earlier. My first major public performance. The cover showed a cheap blue engraving of a grand piano and the words Young Artists Spring Recital. I remembered keeping it because my mother had circled my name in pencil and written, "You made the room listen." She died the following winter, and for years I treated that sentence like a hand resting between my shoulder blades. In my first life, the program disappeared after Sloane visited my house to help me pack for Bellwether. I had assumed it was lost. Now it lay under the piano, dusty but intact. I opened it carefully. The printed order listed Sloane Mercer performing list, followed by Evelyn Hart performing an original piece titled Rain in the Mirror. Except that was not what had happened. Sloane had sprained 2 fingers before the recital. Dean Mercer, then merely her ambitious mother, begged my teacher to let me perform both pieces from behind the hall's decorative screen so donors would not see the substitution. I was 12. I thought helping another girl was noble. Sloane accepted the trophy. The local newspaper called her brilliant. A small lie took its first breath. My mother had objected. I remembered her arguing with the stage manager beside the ticket desk. I remembered the program being used as a hard surface while someone filled out an emergency substitution form. I remembered Sloane's mother tearing away the top sheet and saying the matter was settled. But memory alone was useless. The program showed only the original printed order and my mother's pencil note. Still, when I tilted it toward the window, I saw shallow grooves running across the lower margin.
Lines.
Letters. Pressure marks. My pulse jumped. Someone had written on a sheet placed directly above it. The program had absorbed the shape of the message even after the inked page vanished. I laid a soft graphite pencil almost flat and shaded lightly across the paper. Dark dust settled in the indentations. A few fragments appeared. Substitute, Evelyn Mercer. I stopped before the rubbing could damage anything. The message was there. More importantly, it had been there for 12 years. That morning I did not answer Sloane's messages. I called Bellwether's paper conservation laboratory instead. The receptionist laughed when I said I was a first-year student with a potentially historic recital program, then transferred me to Dr. Lena Alvarez, the conservatory archivist. In my first life, I had known Dr. Alvarez as a quiet woman who wore red glasses and resigned after accusing Dean Mercer of altering acquisition records. At the time, everyone called her bitter. Now I understood she had simply noticed the machine before I did. I told her the program might contain indented writing connected to an old performance substitution. Her voice changed immediately. "Do not shade it again," she said. "Do not erase anything. Put it in a clean folder.
No plastic.
Bring it to the East Archive entrance at 11. I almost told her I knew she would lose her job in 3 years. Instead, I thanked her and placed the program between 2 pieces of acid-free drawing paper from my art portfolio. Bellwether Conservatory looked exactly as I remembered. Pale stone, bronze doors, banners celebrating excellence, and a staircase designed to make poor students feel they had entered someone else's inheritance. I arrived before the audition and used the service entrance. Dr. Alvarez met me in a basement room lined with flat archival boxes. She was younger than I remembered, her dark hair still threaded with only a little silver. She examined the program under raking light, then used an electrostatic detection device to reveal the pressure marks without touching the surface. On the monitor, the hidden sentence appeared more clearly. Substitute Evelyn Hart for Sloane Mercer. Performer change approved by C. Mercer. Below it was a time, a stage manager's initials, and a notation directing that the printed programs not be reissued because donors were already seated. Dr. Alvarez removed her glasses. "Do you understand what this suggests?" she asked. "That I performed Sloane's recital piece," I said. "It suggests that," she replied. "But evidence becomes strong when independent records agree." She searched the Hawthorne Civic Hall archive and found a digitized backstage ledger. The relevant page had been scanned badly, with a dark strip along the binding, yet the time entry matched the indentation on my program. The performer column had been covered with correction tape. Dr. Alvarez requested the physical ledger through an interlibrary courier, but it would take days. I did not have days. The Founders Gala audition began at 1. Sloane expected me to walk into the same trap as before. I asked Dr. Alvarez to create a certified image of the program and document the examination. She agreed, but warned me that exposing a childhood substitution would not automatically prove later theft. "I know," I said. "I'm not using it to prove everything. I'm using it to make them lie in public." That was when she studied me as though I were much older than 19. In a way, I was. At 12:45, Sloane swept into the audition corridor wearing ivory silk and irritation. She was beautiful in the deliberate way of someone who had been trained to turn entrances into ownership. Her eyes landed on the folder beneath my arm. "You ignored 17 messages." I was busy. With what? Remembering things. She disliked that answer. In my first life, I had apologized before she finished accusing me. This time, I let silence sit between us until she filled it. She handed me a marked score of Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Sonata. My cadenza had been copied into her pages in her handwriting. "You'll play the opening," she said. "Then I'll take over at the development. Mother says the judges will understand it as a collaborative interpretation." There was no collaborative category. She planned to claim the complete arrangement after I established its difficult opening. I closed the score. No, one syllable. Her expression barely moved, but I saw panic flicker beneath it. "You need this gala," she said. "Your scholarship review is next month. Then I should probably perform my own work." "Your work?" She smiled. "Careful, Evelyn. People might think you're becoming possessive." The line had frightened me before because she spoke as if ownership itself were a social defect. Now it sounded rehearsed. I asked whether she remembered Hawthorne Civic Hall. The color left her lips for half a second, then returned. "We were children. You won a trophy." "I won many trophies." "Not that one." Her gaze dropped to my folder. She reached for it. I stepped back. That tiny refusal changed the air. Sloane was accustomed to people yielding before contact. "What is in there?" she asked. "A program." "From what?" "A recital where the audience heard me and applauded you." Her face tightened. Then the audition coordinator opened the door and called our names. I had planned to play my original composition, but when I sat at the Steinway, another idea arrived. Pattern interruptions are not only for audiences, they are for enemies. Sloane knew exactly how I performed under pressure. She knew where I accelerated, where I softened, where fear made my left hand heavy. She had built years of manipulation around my predictability. So I began with the piece she had stolen from me in my first life, the opening theme of Inheritance, still unwritten in this timeline. 4 descending notes, a pause, then a fractured chord that resolved upward instead of down. The sound moved through the audition room like a door opening in a house everyone believed empty. Sloane's head snapped toward me. Dean Mercer, seated among the judges, gripped her pen. I played only 40 seconds and stopped. The chief adjudicator leaned forward. "What is that?" "A sketch," I said. "Title?" "No title yet." Sloane stared at me as if I had spoken from inside her skull. In our first life, she had first heard that melody 6 years later when she found my notebook. Now I had played it before witnesses, on a date-stamped audition recording, under my own name. I did not need to accuse her of a theft she had not yet committed. I only needed to remove the future from her reach. The adjudicator asked me to continue. I declined politely and performed a different piece, a brisk, percussive etude built around uneven groups of 5. It was not sentimental. It did not beg. By the final chord, the judges were no longer looking at Dean Mercer for permission to react. They were looking at me. Sloane performed after me and made 3 uncharacteristic errors. The first was technical. The second was emotional. The third was strategic. During the judges' questions, she claimed the 4-note theme I had played sounded familiar because we had developed it together. The recording captured her words. I turned toward her and asked, "When?" She opened her mouth. No answer came. Dean Mercer intervened, praising the collaborative culture of Bellwether. I said nothing more. A trap works best when the trapped person believes she escaped. The judges awarded me the gala solo. Sloane received the secondary performance slot. Dean Mercer congratulated us both, but her eyes promised punishment. As we left, Sloane caught my elbow. "Whatever is in that folder, erase it." The words were quiet, almost childish. I looked down at her hand until she released me. "Why?" I asked. "Because old paper proves nothing. Then you have nothing to fear." By evening, my scholarship account had been flagged for financial irregularities. The online portal claimed my tuition payment was overdue, though Bellwether had covered it in full. In my first life, this kind of administrative threat had sent me running to Dean Mercer's office. This time, I took screenshots, downloaded every statement, and forwarded them to the bursar, the Independent Scholarship Foundation, and Dr. Alvarez. Then I went home and changed the locks on my music cabinet. At midnight, someone tried the back door. I sat in darkness with my phone recording. The handle turned once, paused, and turned again. A shadow crossed the frosted glass. I did not confront it. I called the police and said an intruder was attempting entry. The person fled before officers arrived, but a neighbor's camera captured Sloane's car idling at the corner. She later claimed it had been stolen for 20 minutes. That lie would matter later. The next morning, my father found me sleeping beside the piano with the archival folder under my arm. In this timeline, he was alive, 53, and already carrying the tiredness that would kill him 5 years later. He repaired school instruments for a living and believed wealthy clients were simply ordinary people with better coats. When I showed him the program, he ran his thumb near my mother's penciled sentence, but did not touch it. His eyes filled. "She was furious that night," he said. "Not because you played for the other girl. Because they made you hide." Asked whether he remembered anything else. He went to the garage and returned with a dented metal cash box. Inside were invoices from his old tuning business. One receipt documented an emergency service at Hawthorne Civic Hall on June 3rd, 12 years earlier. The notes read, "Adjusted action after substitute performer requested lower key weight.
A heart preference.
Authorized by C. Mercer." My father had written it himself. "You kept this?" I asked. "Tax records," he said. "Your mother kept everything. After she died, I couldn't throw away a grocery list." The receipt linked the substitution to a physical change made specifically for me. Better, the carbon copy included Dean Mercer's signature. I wanted to hug him and warn him about his heart, his debts, the winter morning when he would ignore chest pain because he could not afford to miss work. Instead, I made him promise to see a doctor that week. He laughed until he saw my face. "All right," he said. "But tell me why you look like someone gave you a second life." I nearly answered honestly. "Because I found something I thought was gone," I said. Over the next 4 days, I built the case without making a single public accusation. Dr. Alvarez obtained the physical stage ledger. Under infrared imaging, the correction tape became translucent, revealing my name beneath it. The former stage manager, now retired in Vermont, agreed to a recorded interview. He remembered the incident because my mother had threatened to stop the recital until the substitution was documented. A local photographer still possessed negatives from backstage. One frame showed me in the blue dress described in the program, seated at the Steinway, while Sloane stood behind the screen with her bandaged hand. The image had never been published because Dean Mercer purchased exclusive rights to the event photographs. Each piece alone could be dismissed. Together, they formed a room with no exit. Still, I did not release them. The Founders Gala was 6 days away. Bellwether planned to announce a new youth scholarship named after Sloane, using her historic debut at Hawthorne as the centerpiece. She would perform Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 12, the same piece I had secretly played for her at 12. I understood then that the gala was not merely a concert. It was a ceremony designed to harden a lie into institutional memory. If I exposed her beforehand, Dean Mercer could cancel the segment, bury the evidence, and describe the matter as a childhood misunderstanding. If I waited until the lie was repeated in front of donors, cameras, and the scholarship board, their own event would authenticate the deception. Patience felt unnatural after a lifetime of being silenced. Every hour I waited, fear told me I was becoming obedient again. I reminded myself that silence chosen by the powerless is surrender, but silence chosen by the prepared can be a blade. Sloane changed tactics. She invited me to lunch at the Conservatory Cafe and arrived without makeup, her eyes red. I was 12, she said before I sat down. My mother told me the audience would be disappointed if I withdrew. I didn't understand. For a moment, I saw the frightened child she had been. Then she added, "You benefited too. Bellwether noticed you because of us." There it was, the old arithmetic of exploitation. They took the credit. I received proximity. They took the stage. I received permission to remain near it. I asked why she wanted the program erased. Because it will humiliate my mother. Not you. I can survive gossip. She can't survive an ethics inquiry. Sloane reached across the table. Give me the original. I'll make sure your scholarship is permanent. I'll also list you as co-arranger for the gala. Co-arranger of my own work. Even Reborn, I almost laughed from disbelief. I told her I would consider it. That surprised her more than refusal. She studied me, searching for the old Evelyn who mistook crumbs for rescue. Bring it to rehearsal tomorrow, she said. We can fix this quietly. I agreed. Then I sent the audio recording of our conversation to my lawyer. In my first life, I had not had a lawyer because I believed lawyers were for people who own buildings. Dr. Alvarez introduced me to Naomi Chen, an alumna who represented musicians in intellectual property disputes. Naomi listened to the recording and said, "She has admitted knowledge, motive, and an attempt to trade institutional benefits for evidence. Do not meet her alone." We arranged for the rehearsal hall's security system to preserve its footage. The conservatory's policy normally deleted rehearsal video after 72 hours. Dr. Alvarez quietly changed the retention setting to permanent under the archive's historical documentation protocol. At rehearsal, Sloane arrived with a pink eraser, the kind children use in school. The choice was deliberate. She wanted the act to seem small.
The pencil note, she said.
Erase your mother's circle and the sentence. Without that, the rest looks like random pressure damage. She still did not know Dr. Alvarez had already imaged the indentation. I placed a high-quality facsimile of the program on the piano. The original remained in a secure archive box. Sloane believed the copy was real because we had reproduced the stains, staple rust, and torn corner. She pushed the eraser toward me. Do it. Why me? Because it is your paper. And my name. Her jaw tightened. Evelyn, stop making this dramatic. I looked at the rehearsal camera, then rubbed the eraser across my mother's sentence. The graphite lifted. Beneath it, reproduced from the electrostatic scan, the indented substitution instruction became more visible. Sloane recoiled. What did you do? She whispered. I erased it. That wasn't there before. It was always there. You just never looked closely. Her face went pale then, but not completely. The true collapse would come at the gala. She seized the program and tore it in half. I let her. The camera watched. The paper was a copy. She stared at the torn pieces in her hands, breathing hard. Now it proves nothing. Thank you, I said. For what? For demonstrating consciousness of guilt. She looked toward the camera. I watched calculation race across her features. Tears appeared almost instantly. You tricked me, she said loudly. You brought a forged document and threatened my family. Then she slapped herself across the cheek. The sound shocked even me. A red mark bloomed on her skin. She stumbled backward, knocked over a chair, and screamed for help. By the time the rehearsal supervisor entered, Sloane was crying that I had attacked her. In my first life, I would have panicked. I would have defended myself with too many words, giving every listener a fragment to misquote. This time, I kept my hands visible and said, "Please preserve the complete video." Sloane's crying stopped for a fraction of a second. The supervisor separated us and called campus security. Dean Mercer arrived within minutes, already demanding my suspension. Naomi arrived 12 minutes later with a preservation notice and the policy number for the rehearsal cameras. When security reviewed the footage, the room became very quiet. Sloane watched herself tear the program, strike her own face, and construct the accusation. Her expression changed not when the slap appeared, but when the audio captured her saying, "Now it proves nothing." Dean Mercer did not surrender. Powerful people rarely collapse in one motion. They redistribute the weight. She called the incident a private emotional crisis and argued that Sloane had reacted to provocation. She accused me of entrapment, unauthorized recording, and creating a hostile educational environment. The board placed both of us under temporary conduct review, but refused to cancel the gala.
Too much donor money depended on it.
More importantly, Dean Mercer announced that Sloane would still headline the scholarship segment to prevent malicious allegations from derailing the institution's mission. That announcement was the mistake I needed. By doubling down, she tied Bellwether's reputation to Sloane's version of history and writing. The day before the gala, my solo disappeared from the printed program. In its place was a generic chamber ensemble. The digital schedule listed me as accompanimental support. Sloane's biography had expanded to include a paragraph about Hawthorne Civic Hall. At age 12, she delivered a landmark interpretation of Liszt that launched her national career. I stared at the sentence and felt something cold settle into focus. They were not hiding the lie. They were polishing it. Dr. Alvarez found me in the archive and asked whether I wanted the press package released immediately. "Not yet," I said. "There is one thing missing." "What?" "Their denial." We had evidence of the event and evidence of attempted destruction. But I wanted Dean Mercer, on stage and on record, to affirm that Sloane had performed. Once she did, no later excuse about confusion or faulty memory would survive. Naomi thought the plan was risky. The board chair might cut the microphone. Security might remove me. The live stream could be delayed. So we built redundancies. The old program scan was scheduled to upload automatically to 3 newsrooms at 8:15. The stage manager's interview, tuning receipt, ledger image, photograph, rehearsal footage, and scholarship biography were bundled with a timeline. Dr. Alvarez arranged for the auditorium document camera to mirror simultaneously to the main screen and the archive server. My father sat beside Naomi in the center aisle with the original receipt. The retired stage manager joined by video link under the pretext of accepting a community arts honor. I wore a black dress with deep pockets and carried nothing visible. The original program remained secured in the archive until 5 minutes before the segment. Then Sloane visited my dressing room.
No tears, no srets.
She closed the door and placed my First Life concerto melody on the music stand for notes copied from the audition recording. "I can still take it," she said. "You played an unfinished sketch in a private audition. I can develop it into something better before you complete it." The cruelty was almost comforting. For days she had worn innocence like perfume. Now the real Sloane stood before me, furious that time itself had given me an advantage. "You took it before," I said. She blinked. "What?" I had not intended to reveal anything, but the words felt necessary. "In another life, you took everything I wrote. You received the applause. I received a broken guardrail." Sloane stared, then laughed uncertainly. "You are insane." "Maybe. But I remember the ending." She tore the 4-note page from the stand. "There will be no ending for you here. My mother removed your solo. After tonight, the conduct committee will expel you. Your father's loan will be called in. Dr. Alvarez will be dismissed for mishandling archival material. You keep behaving as if one dirty program can outweigh an institution. I stepped closer. It doesn't have to outweigh Bellwether. It only has to make Bellwether decide you are heavier. For the first time, she looked afraid not of exposure, but abandonment. Her confidence had always rested on certainty that the institution would sacrifice anyone else first. She opened the door, then turned back. Erase it, Evelyn. Last chance. No, I said. Last performance. The gala began beneath chandeliers shaped like frozen rain. Donors filled the velvet seats. Cameras moved along the aisles. Dean Mercer welcomed everyone with a speech about integrity, heritage, and the sacred duty to preserve artistic truth. I almost admired the precision of the irony. Sloane performed first. Technically, she was excellent. Fear sharpened her. She attacked Liszt with such force that several passages sounded less interpreted than punished. When she struck the final chord, the audience rose. I had once believed applause proved ownership. Now I heard it as weather. Loud, temporary, belonging to whoever stood beneath it. Sloane bowed and glanced toward the wings. I gave her a small nod. Her smile faltered. Dean Mercer returned to introduce the youth scholarship. Behind her, the screen displayed the childhood photograph of Sloane holding the Hawthorne Trophy. 12 years ago, she said, my daughter sat at a piano in a modest civic hall and revealed a gift that none of us could deny. Her performance of Liszt that evening began a journey that has inspired countless young musicians. The denial was not subtle. It was ceremonial, amplified, and witnessed. Naomi texted one word from the audience. Now. Dr. Alvarez placed the original program in my hand. I walked on stage before Dean Mercer could continue. At first, the audience assumed I belonged there. Formal events train people to trust confident movement. I crossed to the document camera and placed the program beneath it. The cover appeared on the enormous screen. Dean Mercer turned toward me with a smile so rigid it looked painful. Evelyn, your ensemble performs later. I know. I faced the audience. Before the scholarship is announced, I would like to correct the history being used to fund it. A murmur moved through the hall. The board chair rose. Naomi rose too and handed him a folder. Sloane remained seated at the piano, one hand gripping the bench. I opened the program to the performance order. My mother's circle surrounded my name. Her sentence rested in the margin. You made the room listen. This belonged to my mother, I said. She attended the Hawthorne recital. The printed order lists Sloane Mercer performing Liszt and me performing an original work. But Sloane did not play that night. Dean Mercer stepped toward the microphone. This is an unstable student exploiting a childhood misunderstanding. There it was, denial, insult, minimization. The familiar three-part chord. I asked, are you stating that Sloane performed the Liszt piece? Yes, she said. I was present. And no substitution occurred? None. Sloane whispered, Mother. Too late. I displayed the certified electrostatic scan. The indented instruction filled the screen. Substitute Evelyn Hart for Sloane Mercer. Performer change approved by C. Mercer. The audience shifted, but Dean Mercer recovered quickly. An indentation can be fabricated. Dr. Alvarez walked on stage and explained the examination method, chain of custody, paper age, and matching pressure pattern. Dean Mercer called her biased. The retired stage manager appeared on the video screen and confirmed the substitution. Dean Mercer called his memory unreliable. My father presented the signed tuning receipt. She called it irrelevant. The photograph appeared next. Me at the piano, Sloane behind the screen with bandaged fingers. Dean Mercer opened her mouth, but this time no sound came. Sloane stood abruptly.
Fine, she said.
She played because I was injured. It was one recital. I was a child. Her voice echoed through the hall. Then why did you ask me to erase the program? I asked. She looked at the torn facsimile image now displayed beside the rehearsal timestamp. The video began. On screen, Sloane pushed the pink eraser toward me. Erase your mother's circle and the sentence. Without that, the rest looks like random pressure damage. The audience heard her tell me to destroy it. They watched her tear the copy. They watched her slap herself and accuse me. When the footage reached her words, "Now it proves nothing," the live stream comments moved too quickly to read. Her face went pale. Not delicately pale, not the poetic loss of color described in novels. It was physical and total. Her lips turned nearly white. She reached for the piano as though the instrument that had carried her lie could now hold her upright. Dean Mercer whispered something to the board chair. He stepped away from her. That small movement wounded her more than the evidence. Sloane had expected anger, scandal, perhaps even suspension. She had not expected distance. Institutions rarely love their symbols. They protect them only while protection remains cheaper than sacrifice. I could have ended there. The evidence package was already public. Reporters were receiving it. Board members were opening the rehearsal transcript. But the concerto theme waited inside me, and I had learned that reclaiming a name required more than proving who had stolen it. I moved to the piano, and Saturday, this gala, removed my scheduled solo. I said, "So I will take 4 minutes of the time once assigned to me." The board chair did not stop me. Dean Mercer's authority had evaporated so quickly that the silence itself became permission. I played Inheritance, though I changed the title before the first chord. Second Life began with the same 4 descending notes I had played at the audition, but the pause afterward was longer. In my first life, the melody had always resolved toward grief. This time, I refused that gravity. The left hand entered with a pulse like the wooden metronome in my childhood room. The theme fractured, crossed itself, disappeared into the lowest register, then returned stripped of ornament. Halfway through, I inserted the rhythm of my mother's sentence. You made the room listen. 6 words, 6 accents rising. I did not play to humiliate Sloane. I played because for 12 years she had occupied the space between my hands and the audience. With every measure, I closed that distance. When I finished, nobody stood immediately. The final note remained in the rafters, and the room seemed afraid to disturb it. Then my father began clapping. Dr. Alvarez joined him. The retired stage manager applauded from the screen. The sound spread until the audience rose, not in the explosive wave that had followed Sloane's list, but slowly, row by row. I looked at the program under the document camera. My mother's pencil had faded. The pressure marks were nearly invisible, without special light. Yet both had survived every attempt to erase them. I understood then that survival was not always loud. Sometimes it was a groove in paper, holding the shape of truth long after the hand that made it was gone. Security escorted Dean Mercer from the stage after she tried to seize the original program. Sloane was not removed. She simply walked off alone. Her black ribbon had come loose and trailed from her wrist. For 1 second, pity moved through me. She had been 12 when the first lie began. Her mother had taught her that talent was less important than uninterrupted belief in talent. But Sloane had spent every year afterward choosing the lie again. Childhood explained the first theft. It did not excuse the next 100. The gala ended without announcing the scholarship. By midnight, the board suspended Dean Mercer, froze all decisions connected to my conduct review, and appointed outside counsel. By morning, 3 former students had reported similar credit thefts. A cellist produced emails showing Sloane had claimed his arrangement. A composer found metadata proving Dean Mercer altered submission dates. A singer revealed she had recorded guide vocals later presented as Sloane's live performance. My program had not exposed one isolated fraud. It had loosened a stone in a wall, and the wall had been holding back years of voices. Sloane released a statement describing herself as a victim of parental pressure. Parts of it were true. She had been controlled, curated, and displayed. But the statement omitted the scholarship threats, the stolen manuscripts, the false assault, and the attempted destruction of evidence. Naomi advised me not to respond emotionally. So I published one sentence. Pressure can explain why someone enters a lie. It cannot justify why she locks the door behind everyone else. The sentence was quoted more widely than I expected. Sloane deleted her social accounts by evening. The investigation lasted 7 months. Dean Mercer resigned before the final report, but resignation did not prevent the findings from being released. The report confirmed systematic manipulation of scholarships, performance credits, archival records, and disciplinary procedures. Bellwether offered me compensation, permanent tuition, and a public apology drafted by 6 lawyers. I accepted the tuition, rejected the confidentiality clause, and rewrote the apology myself. Dr. Alvarez became interim director of the archive, then permanent director. She created a policy requiring student compositions to be time-stamped, independently stored, and credited in every rehearsal record. My father's loan turned out to be tied to a shell foundation controlled by one of Dean Mercer's associates. Naomi had it voided. More importantly, he kept his doctor's appointment. They found the arterial blockage before it became fatal. That was the miracle I treasured most. Not the applause. Not the headlines. My father lived. He complained about medication, reduced the salt in his cooking with theatrical misery, and began walking every morning. Sometimes I followed him without telling him why the sight of his shoulders in the sunrise made me cry. Rebirth had given me a chance to defeat Sloane, but revenge was not the only future I reclaimed. I attended dinners I had once missed. I recorded his stories about repairing pianos in churches, schools, and hotel bars. I asked him to teach me how to voice hammers by ear. In my first life, I had thought success would repay him. In my second, I understood presence was the debt that mattered. Sloane left Bellwether. For nearly a year, I heard nothing. Then a letter arrived without a return address. Inside was the black ribbon she used to wear and a single page in her handwriting. She did not apologize. Not exactly. She wrote that she had begun taking lessons under another name at a community center where nobody knew her history. Her teacher had assigned scales. "I hate them," she wrote. "They reveal everything uneven." She admitted the Hawthorne recital had haunted her because it was the first time applause felt better than honesty. She said her mother taught her to protect that feeling at any cost. At the bottom, she asked whether Second Life had always belonged to me. I placed the letter inside a box and did not answer for 3 months. Forgiveness offered too quickly can become another service extracted from the injured. When I finally wrote back, I did not come for her. I said, "The piece belonged to me when it was only 4 notes. What you do with your own next 4 notes is your responsibility." I never learned whether she kept the letter. I did learn, years later, that she became a competent accompanist for children's choirs in another state. She never returned to the concert circuit. Some people called that a fall. I did not. Standing behind young singers and supporting their voices without stealing them might have been the first honest music she ever made. As for me, I completed Second Life and premiered it at Hawthorne Civic Hall, the same modest room where the original lie began. We did not renovate the peeling gold trim or replace the squeaking seats. I wanted the hall exactly as it was. Ordinary, imperfect, incapable of pretending history had happened somewhere grander. Dr. Alvarez curated a small lobby exhibit about authorship and archival evidence. My father tuned the Steinway. Naomi sat in the aisle with a program folded neatly in her lap. At the entrance, every audience member received a cream recital program printed from a letterpress plate. My name appeared once, clearly, without ornamental biography or borrowed glory. Before the performance, I placed my mother's original program beneath glass beside the stage. The penciled sentence remained visible. So did the pressure marks. The label did not call it evidence of scandal. It read, "A document that remembered." I liked that better. Scandal belongs to the people who cause it. Memory belongs to everyone who refuses to let it be rewritten. The hall lights dimmed. I walked to the piano and paused before sitting. In my first life, I had spent years imagining revenge as a moment when Sloane would finally understand my pain. But her pale face at the gala was not the ending. Her humiliation did not restore my mother, return lost years, or compose a single measure. The true ending was quieter. My father breathing steadily in the 3rd row, my work printed under my name, and no locked room between my hands and the listeners. I began to play. The opening notes descended.
The pause widened.
Then the music rose. After the final chord, I did not look toward the wings for permission. I did not search the audience for Sloane. I looked at the old program beneath glass, at the grooves left by a vanished form, and thought about how close I had come to throwing it away. A sheet of paper had carried no voice, yet it had remembered mine when I had forgotten how to use it. Someone once told me to erase it. Instead, I erased the future she had written for me. Behind me, the page did not tremble beneath the glass. It no longer needed defending. The names, dates, grooves, and faded pencil had already done their work. I lowered my hands, stood, and bowed. Not for borrowed applause, but for a life returned. And this time, when the room listened, it knew exactly who was playing.